Principal Matters Podcast, episode 466. Hi, friends. This is Will Parker, host of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast, where each week I bring you inspiring, innovative, and imaginative ideas for your own school leadership. And this week, I'm talking to a good friend, LaDonna Chancellor, about leading collaboratively. LaDonna Chancellor is the Executive Director of Teaching and Learning for Bartlesville Public Schools in Oklahoma. With over 25 years in education, she began as a special education teacher, later serving as assistant principal and principal at Central Middle School and Bartlesville High School. As a high school principal, she led major transitions, expanded STEM programs, and earned national recognition for diversity in computer science. In her current role, she oversees curriculum, supports principals, and champions student well-being through initiatives like Unplugged School Days. A graduate of Northeastern State University and Southern Nazarene University, LaDonna continues to drive academic excellence and student success across her district. And LaDonna, I just have to say, we are old colleagues, friends. We both were teaching at the same time. You were responsible for some of the work I'm doing presently. But before I go there, let me just ask you to fill in the gaps in that intro. And why don't you tell listeners something else they may be surprised to know about you?
Okay. I did not go directly into education out of high school, so I was not ready to go to college. I started working. I worked in an abstract office and did that for several years, and then found myself a single young mom of two girls and decided I needed a career, not just a job, and always knew if I went to college, I wanted to be a teacher. So, went to college, and I remember my dad asking me at the time, going back to the single mom part, um, are you sure you want to go to college and then teach? Not the profession, but right now you're the one earning the living for you and the girls. And I was just always, I mean, it was never a question for me. It was, yes, absolutely. That's what I want to do. And I know I want to teach special education. I just, I have always had an interest in kind of supporting the underdog, if you will, where I have seen in my own personal experience where I thought, students weren't challenged enough. I had a really good friend in high school who honestly graduated high school, could barely read. And his teachers, when they would challenge him academically, he would act out. And so they just gave up. And I wanted to be the teacher that would never give up on kids. I'm going to expect a lot out of you. I'm going to challenge you, but I'm going to support you every step of the way to get there. So.
Well, you are that person, LaDonna, and I do have to take Principal Matters listeners for a walk down memory lane with me. So, I mean, we're going to go way back to the
Oh
night.
boy.
So you were stepping into teaching in the late 90s. I had been teaching at that time in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, and you were at Catoosa. And then I came over to Catoosa to teach AP language and work with the English department there. And you and I were both working on our masters about the same time when one day you walked up to me. Well, first of all, I just want to say, as a special education teacher, you were in classrooms. You're so inclusive. You were always supporting students inside, outside those classrooms. So many times you sat in while I was doing instruction, even with the students that I was supporting, so you could provide that additional feedback and input. And so I was saying before we even started recording that if every school could have special education teachers like you, they would just be so blessed. But you also made a decision to transition in your career, and you encouraged me in the same way. You were the one who gave me the heads up on the assistant principal role I ended up applying for and taking at Bixby Public Schools. And then ever since we've been peers leading in different school settings. And so this is just such a joy for me to go full circle back around and have you as a guest on the show. But let's take Principal Matters down this road a little bit too. Well, actually, I'm going to fast forward it to where you are currently, and then we're going to back up from there.
Okay.
But right now, you've served in so many capacities, but right now you're proudly serving as an executive director of teaching and learning at Bartlesville Public Schools in Oklahoma. What are you most proud of happening in your schools as you get to serve in the current district that you're in?
One of the things I'm most proud of, right now, teacher recruitment and retention is just a it's a biggest need for almost every district, I think. And one of the first things that I started when I came into this position is a new teacher academy. So really providing that extra support for new teachers. Even first thinking emergency certified teachers who are making a career transition. So they have degrees, but they're not education degrees. But they're interested in teaching, and we're getting them emergency or alternative certified and bringing them into the classroom, but they don't have any formal training. So how can we support them to be successful? And then still your new teachers who have had that educational formal training, they still need a lot of support in their first year. We all did. And so started that. This is the third year that we've had the New Teacher Academy. So we just graduated, if you will, cohort 3, and we've seen a 90% retention rate of the new teachers that we've hired. So I think that's been a great investment, and we continue to get really good feedback from the teachers about that process. So I'm really proud of that.
Oh my gosh, I know you are. And for those listeners outside of Oklahoma, Bartlesville is one of those communities where you're large enough that you have almost every offering that a high school, for instance, could offer, or a middle school or your elementary. But it's also a small enough community that you can wrap your arms around that community because you have, that one flagship high school still. And so I know your community has so much pride in the work that goes on there, LaDonna. You've led in this capacity now in several roles, and so I want to just ask you some questions about. First of all, what motivated you to move from teaching to school leadership? Because that's a big transition, and so take us back there.
Sure. Really the same reason that I got into teaching. Once I started teaching, I started looking around and thinking, oh man, we if kids had an opportunity to do this or be a part of this. So it was really that same passion for how can I help my students be successful, right? Expanding that beyond just my students as a teacher. So how can I take that and increase that influence? And so that's why I got into administration, and that's still why I'm doing what I'm doing today. So I was able to do that as an assistant principal, and that's a fun role for everybody who's ever been an assistant principal at a high school or a middle school or any level. You get to do all of the fun things when you're the assistant principal, right? But a great learning opportunity, and then as you get to be the principal, a little bit more of the vision caster, and just continuing to look for ways. It's always been a goal for me as a principal. One, when I got that first principal role, I just remember having the thought that I want all of my teachers to want to come to school every day. Because if they want to come to school, then their classroom is going to be a more enjoyable place for kids, right? And I always think from the lens of have our kids deserve a quality experience in our classrooms every day. So that's always, and in any way I can influence that, that's always my goal and what I'm working towards.
Wow. That's so motivating. And what I love about that, LaDonna, is just like you want teachers to create those kind of inviting atmospheres for students who never want to miss a day. How do we as leaders imagine what that scenario is like for teachers? Because it's kind of weird. Even when I was a young teacher, for some reason, I had a hard time imagining my principals being teachers. I just I just kind of had a hard time imagining them ever having been. And so you kind of put up this wall where you're just like, they're them and we're we're us. And then suddenly you find yourself in the role of supporting teachers, and you still want to be able to reach their hearts as well as provide them with all the things they need for teaching. What were some of the surprises for you? And I know we're talking to an audience of leaders, so this won't surprise them, but I'm just curious, what was that like for you?
Um, hmm, what was the most surprising? Um, I think that not all adults were that had the same priority that I did
Hmm.
around student success and supporting students. And some were fairly, not a lot, but some people are a little quick to give up on kids.
Mm.
And how to support those folks, to inspire them to kind of change that mindset. Because John Hattie has some research out there, and some of the research on some of the most impactful strategies of a teacher is the basic what you believe your kids can achieve.
That's right.
And so if that's not at the foundation, when you come into your classroom, if you already look at a student and think, oh, well, I can't get this kiddo to do anything.
Mhm.
Well, guess what? That's what you're going to get. And that's just not good enough.
Well, it's so true. And, whether it's John Hattie or Carol Dweck's work on growth mindset,
Mm-hmm.
when we communicate the message that this may be too hard for me or you, or I'm just not good at fill in the blank math or science or reading, versus the mindset of, oh, you don't know how to do this yet. You have yet to figure out how to do this. And so I don't think you're alone, LaDonna.
Exactly.
I don't think you're alone
Exactly.
when you, as a leader, because I've talked to lots of leaders who've had that same, oh, I thought that all of the adults I'm working with would have the same commitment to reaching all kids that I'm used to having in my work or seeing in my with my peers. And so it is a little startling when suddenly you're realizing maybe we don't all share the same mindset. But then there's that motivation of, well, then how can I help them adapt this new mindset or attract people on my team that's the mindset that they want, which
Right.
is, which just takes us back to the work you're doing now with this new teachers academy and really being able to pour into young teachers and being able to sustain them over time and keep them in retention. What advice would you give to someone who may be stepping in though as a new leader or into a new situation? What advice would you give them to hold on to two or three things that they should keep in mind in a new season or a new school or new role?
Um, Something that's really important for me is to maintain a positive attitude always. Our work is hard, um, but I don't have time to get bogged down in the we can't and this is why we can't. I don't have time for that. I need to know how we can make things work. I'm about problem solving, and doing it in a positive way. And, positive relationships, I would say to any new leader, just like in your classroom with students, the relationships that you build are the foundation of your success as a leader as well, right? I love Todd Whitaker's work, and he talks about build, maintain, repair, build, maintain, repair relationships. Um, and that's with staff, students, parents, um, because it's just the foundation um, for me.
Mm.
Something else as a new person coming into a new role in a new district, even if it's not in a new district, it's just a new role. Watch and listen, learn. Um, there's probably been a lot of wisdom in choices made before you came into that role that you may not know the ins and outs and the details of why those decisions were made,
Mm.
but watch and listen. I think
Wow.
that's really, and give yourself permission to not know all the answers. That was a hard one for me. I always felt like when people came to me as the principal that like I was supposed to know the exact right thing to do or say, and that's hard. I mean, how can you know all the things?
Oh, that's so good, LaDonna.
But
Yeah.
so give yourself that permission. And I still have to do that to this day.
No, I love that. So I'm going to just say this on behalf of our listeners, but if you're listening to this and this is great advice for veteran leaders too, but if you're listening to this and you're getting ready to step into a new role or situation, those four things, maintaining that positive attitude always, making sure you're building relationships, maintaining them and repairing them, watching, listening, and learning. I like how you said to respect that history or that legacy that's happened before you start thinking about change, and then
Mhm.
giving yourself the grace to know that you don't know it all,
Mhm.
and just accepting that it's okay to have a lot to learn.
Mhm.
For the veteran leader, and sorry, LaDonna, we're veterans now, but for the
Yes, we
veteran
are.
leaders, what advice would you give to someone who's been doing this work a while, but they want to hold on to that passion, they want to hold on to that energy? What advice would you give them to be able to stay motivated in this work?
Work-life balance, work and personal life balance. Uh, that's hard in busy seasons. Summer, it's not as hard, obviously, right? There's still a lot going on when you're a leader, but um,
Yeah, and we'll stop there for a second, LaDonna, because you're saying things that I know you practice. So
mhm.
pause there, and what does that look like for you, just in some tangible ways?
So I schedule family time.
Mm.
Um, Family time with all of our kids and grandkids. Time make sure that with just my husband each week, it's really that and the 7 habits that sharpen the saw, how you plan each week and be intentional with your time. Some weeks I'm better at it than others. Be totally honest, it's an ongoing, right? It's an ongoing process of self-improvement.
Yeah, for sure.
But if
No,
you
I love
don't
that.
do that, then I don't, you just feel like you're chasing yourself the whole time.
I love
It's
that. So,
unhealthy.
no, and what I'm just pausing there because that work life tension is so real. And I
Mhm.
think the practical things that you're saying, scheduling time with your family and your kids and your grandkids and your spouse, and planning time ahead of these are the things I'm going to mark as important to me, are so intentional. And because I know you personally, I also know you've made a huge commitment to personal health and fitness. And so
Mhm.
even in the you've had such a varied career and you've always been busy. But
Yeah.
how have you made time to still take care of yourself in ways to maintain your running and the other things you do for your own health?
You just prioritize, and it's that honestly, it's the early bird gets the worm
Mhm.
scenario. It's you got to get up, and for me anyway, I have to get up, and my day has to start there because there are too many things throughout the day that can hijack your calendar, and then it doesn't happen. So for me, that get up, get the run in, get those things done, while I'm still in control of the day,
Mhm.
I have to get up and do that early. But it also gives me clarity about the day ahead. A lot of mornings I say, the hardest part of this day is behind me.
Yeah.
If I just ran my 3 miles, I'm good. I got this.
Mhm.
So it does mentally as well as physically help me stay engaged and in a good headspace and a good frame of mind. So
That's so good. Well, I want to come back to any other words of advice that you may have for newer veteran leaders, but I want to transition for a moment because, again, because I'm familiar with your work, I also know just how important collaboration has been for you
mhm.
as a teacher, as an assistant principal, as a principal, as an executive director of learning and teaching. Talk about that. And can you give examples too of how collaboration is something that you intentionally continue to focus on as a part of your own growth and leadership?
Sure. So I think as the leader, you have the vision for where you want your team to go. But I think it's important that anytime you can, that you include others in the decision-making process. So even though you have the vision of where you want to go, you begin with the end in mind, working with a team, and you let the team help you develop the details of how to get there.
Mhm.
So the best example I can think of was my third year at the high school. We were transitioning from a junior senior campus on our side of town to a 9 through 12 campus. So we were combining two staffs of over 50 teachers apiece, right? And how do you bring two staffs together who have each in their own rights at their own schools been very successful, had their own traditions, had different kind of schedules. How do you bring all those people together to work as a team? And that began with meeting with each one of them individually over that year before we actually came together, just individual conversations like, what are you most excited about? What are you afraid of? What do you think our challenges are? What do you think we're doing well? And honoring the things that they feel like are going well. And then accepting that there are challenges, and recognizing that and bringing all of them together. So, and then as you identify what your big rocks were going to be through that process, building teams that can help map out that work. So talking about traditions, that was a big piece of the work. What traditions are we going to maintain as we bring these two schools together,
Mhm.
um, bell schedule. We were on a 6 period day. The other school was on a 7 period day. So what is this going to look like? How do we make this work? And so we knew where we were headed, but let them help build all the details and what that's like. And then people have buy-in and they understand why you're doing it. And it's always about creating the best environment for our students to be successful.
Wow. I remembered when that transition happened, LaDonna. You had a really vibrant ninth and 10th grade center of its own. And
Yeah.
then at
Mhm.
11th and 12th grade was the way you guys had structured your high school. But then when you made the decision as a district to move them all under one building and then transfer that other building into a different school, um, that was uh, that was huge because it had been the legacy of that community for a really long time. And I love what you said that you guys had the goal and the vision for what the end product needed to be, but you worked out the details of what that was going to be with the conversations you had with individuals and with teams and by pulling people in for one-on-ones, but also putting people in groups to be able to work out things and then, breaking down how you're going to be able to marry and carry on those traditions or redo your bell schedule. It's so interesting. I did not plan it this way, but the podcast conversation that we'll release the week before this one is with a principal friend of mine named Derek Cantrell. And he just shared on that podcast the story of combining two legacy high schools in the same community into one building, too. And it's so funny or so neat how similar what you just described is in terms of the focus of leaders who have to be able to collaboratively pull people together to be able to carry on the things that you know. I'm going to suggest that that collaborative model, that's just one example, is a model that you've used over and over again in other settings too. So talk about that. How does that look like now in the role that you serve as an executive director for teaching and learning?
Sure. So anytime that you are, okay, here's a very recent example. So as we've been studying the anxious generation and looking at our students' use of screen time, cell phones, those kinds of things, another piece of that came out of our work was looking at um, balancing play and learning in our early childhood classrooms. And so we started having conversations about that and asking the question, are we, you know, uh, is there a better balance? Can we provide a better balance for students to be up and moving more and more? It's not unstructured play, it's very structured, but it's also learning. And so just last week, I had a team who a couple we have for our grade levels district-wide, we have obviously a leader, but then we also have a principal assigned to that team, an instructional coach assigned to that team. So I had the principal and one kindergarten teacher from each of our elementary schools, and then a second principal. So actually two elementary principals. But they just took a trip to Mansfield ISD in Fort Worth and toured and went to a workshop, a one-day workshop at Dr. Jankuro Early Learning Center. I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly. And I apologize to them if I didn't. Jandreco. And it is an amazing early learning center. And so our teachers went down, and the whole goal of that was to see what they're doing, because they have a great balance of play and learning. And even though it looks like they don't have desks and chairs in their early childhood classroom, but students are on the carpet for direct instruction for a few minutes, and then they're up in pairs transitioning, and you can monitor and assess the learning of the standards as they're moving through the classroom. I mean, it's amazing. But so taking that team, letting them experience that, and now they're coming back, right? On this coming Monday, that team is going to get together. We're going to have substitutes in their classrooms. That team is going to get together, and they're going to go back and look at their essential standards. And then they're going to start looking at, okay, what kind of instructional activities can we implement in the fall that incorporate more play? And then each one of those teachers can go back to their school and share, hey, this is what we want to do. Here's how we, and spread it from there.
Oh my gosh,
That's a current example.
that's so good. Now, for Principal Matters listeners, um, you're probably listening to this in the fall semester, August or early September. This conversation that LaDonna and I are recording right now is happening in the spring. So there's so many things I love about that, LaDonna, which is one, you know a direction that you want to take your schools based on the research and the feedback of what's going on with students and the generation that we're in and how we can encourage that balance of play and learning.
Yes.
Two, you are collaboratively looking for solutions. So guess what? Let's go someplace else that's already practicing some routines that might be helpful for us to model. And three, you're bringing that team back to develop what the next strategies are going to be. And you're doing all of this months before another semester is going to begin. So by the time this recording comes out, you will already be practicing some of these things within your schools based on all of that collaboration. And it's so funny because this is full circle for me. I remember when I was serving as an AP and we were trying to develop some better ways to collaborate and work in professional learning communities, we traveled to your schools and we came up and spent some time walking with our teachers, with your teachers. And so, LaDonna, this has just been, your collaborative spirit has been something you've carried from every place that you've been till now. I want to do two things as we wrap up. First of all, I just want to say thank you for your amazing leadership in the career that you've given in education, for the way you've poured into students and communities and schools, especially in the last several years right there in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. But I want listeners who are enjoying this conversation today to be able to get to know you and connect with you. So as we wrap up, I want you to be able to say how they can find you, whether it's through email or social media, and then any other parting words of wisdom that you would give for a leader as they're stepping into their work and holding on to their own mission and serving schools.
Sure. So the best way to reach me is really by email, my school email, and that's Chancellor, CHANCELLOR, LM @bps-ok.org. And parting thoughts would be, none of us are in easy jobs, if you will, but they are worthwhile jobs that impact students' futures.
Mm.
And our teachers are our students' best hope for a bright future.
Mm.
And that's what I come to work to support every day.
Mm.
So.
Well, oh my gosh, what a great way to wrap up, LaDonna, because I'm just thinking right now, Wallace Foundation Research 2012 that came out and said the #1 greatest factor at school for the growth and benefit of students is the quality of the teacher that's right in front of them. And #2, right behind that, for their ability to perform really great at school is the quality of their school leader. And so both of those things are tandem. So Principal Matters listeners, as you're listening in, we're going to put LaDonna's email in the show notes so you can find her there, or you can check her out on LinkedIn or other places where she has social media channels, or Twitter. But as you're stepping into this week, you're also building that hope with your teachers and with your students, providing a place that it's not easy, but it's worthwhile because of the impact that we're making in the lives of students and others. So LaDonna Chancellor, thank you for the impact that you're making. And Principal Matters listeners, thank you for listening in and learning. Until next time,